To all our loyal listeners, you might notice that the title of this episode of Survivor Analytics is particularly odd. Last week, we discussed episode 6 of Survivor Cook Islands, where Cowboy famously concocts Plan Voodoo. This week, we are jumping to episode 8. So what exactly happened in that mystery episode 7? Episode 7 of this season is titled A Closer Look. It's essentially a highlight reel of the first 6 episodes with a couple secret scenes. Now, we're all busy people, and who has time to watch literally every episode of the entire season? Me is the answer. Jack, our resident voice of the people, was traveling the country this week, getting new experiences, while I took on the responsibility of the true expert. And I'll say, it's a pretty good episode. I think it's better than some of the episodes that actually made the cut for the final season. There's multiple scenes that I would have liked to make it into the actual show, and I could easily just run through those scenes, recap them quickly, but that doesn't seem very fun. I wanted to turn this into a game.
Oh,
So
yes.
I have a multiple choice quiz for you, Jack.
Let's go.
We're going to see if you can correctly predict the actions of these players based on the knowledge that you've built up through the first 6, 7 episodes, whatever. First segment that we get is one that we actually complained about earlier in the season. We get to watch the mystery Raro wine party. The footage was hidden in the closer look, so we criticized the episode at the time, but the producers knew it was valuable content. The party's crazy. The wine bottle's getting passed around, but one player gets a bit tipsier than expected. So the question is, who gets drunk at the Raro wine party? I have 4 options for you. We have option A, Nate, who famously said that he wanted to get faded beforehand. We have B, Stephanie, the innocent one. C, Parvati, the flirty party girl. Or D, Brad, who's kind of the sleeper pick of this group. Who would you say gets drunk at the Raro wine party?
My head first goes to either Nate or Brad. Nate because he said ahead of time that he wanted to get lit. Brad because Brad is not in a good spot after the party, right? We're seeing some ostracism, some divide between Brad and the rest of his tribe. But I'm going to go with Stephanie.
You are correct.
Oh, let's go.
Stephanie gets a lot of content in the closer look. I feel that her character was more fleshed out in this one episode than it was the rest of the season combined.
That's not fair to her.
Stephanie rarely drinks in her everyday life, so 3 swigs of the wine bottle combined with the lack of food leaves Stephanie drunk on her ass.
Oh, no.
There's a moment where she's singing and then she just leans back and starts to close her eyes, but the rest of the tribe, the true partiers took care of her, which I appreciated. So question 1 down. I got 2 more for you.
All right.
Question 2 is the Candace Adam fishing segment. So on the original Raro tribe before the swap, Candace and Adam embark on a fishing trip as a collection of dark, ominous clouds approach their camp. So their boat gets caught in a storm, leaving them stranded on a sandbar. So how does the pair respond? I have 4 options. Option A, they stay on the sandbar with their boat and wait out the storm. Option B, they lose the boat to the current and they hook up on the sandbar. Option C, they abandon the boat and swim back to shore. Or D, they request that production interferes and helps them safely return to camp.
It's got to be B.
The hookup on the sandbar?
Yeah.
That is not correct, unfortunately. I do feel like the edit would make you think that they hooked up beforehand, since there's the scene of Candace sitting on the jury and blowing kisses to Adam.
I know there's some sparks there, and I know those sparks are going to continue to fly as the season goes on, so I'm expecting it to have already begun. But I guess not.
Yeah, instead, they lose their fishing boat, they abandon it on the sandbar and swim back to shore, which seems like a pretty lengthy swim. Even though there was not a lot of sparks in this segment, I feel that the clip at least contextualized their relationship. Like, if they included this in the actual show in place of one of the cowboy scenes of him making racist comments, then I feel like we would better understand their connection that's shown later on. But final example, we have an Ozzy segment where Ozzy attempts to bond with the women of I2. And this is the post-swap version of I2. So that group of like Candace, Sandra, and Becky. How does Ozzy attempt to bond with the women? A, hunting local birds with extravagant traps, B, arm wrestling, C, discussing their favorite DVD movies, or D, embarking on a fishing expedition?
It's got to be C. It's got to be C. C, let me say this. I don't think you can get into the headspace of 2006 well enough to come up with that. The DVD movies, that is so perfectly of the time that if you made that up, I have a lot of respect for you. But I don't think you could have come up with something that perfect. So I think it's DVDs.
Well, you underestimate me, Jack. That was a fake
Excellent.
Clyde response. The answer is obviously D, the fishing expedition. Even in the ancillary
known.
episode, Ozzy gets more screen time highlighting his role as the provider. So you can never escape that side of Cook Islands, no matter which episode of the season that you watch. So 1 for 3 isn't too bad.
It's pretty bad.
Well, you didn't watch the episode, right? So
No, I didn't.
we can't expect that much. But I feel like
I did watch 8 and 9, though.
you watched episode 9, which is the better between the two. But we won't talk about that till later on.
But I only have my notes in front of me for this week, so it's all good. But well done. Thank you for taking the bullet and watching even more Survivor than you are mandatorily obliged to by the pact we signed in blood a couple years ago that drives us to watch every episode of Survivor or die trying.
Well, I'll say this, that I feel like every season of Survivor will have these throwaway episodes. You get the closer look and you get the reunion at the very end. Typically, we don't cover either one of them, except for the new era seasons because they rush through the reunion in its entirety. Between those two, I think the closer look is more valuable than the reunions because the reunions are just time filler in my mind.
Oh, God. I mean, I hate the reunions, especially now. I think new era reunions, the Maria Charlie thing. Oh, I don't... Move on. I don't want to get worked up. But I think the stuff that's on the cutting room floor, but perhaps they saved because they want to have this break in the season. I've been watching a lot of anime lately, and a big thing in anime is the filler arc, where basically they say, you know what? We want to waste the viewer's time, but we want them to still watch this show. So we're just going to have some content that's kind of exciting, but isn't that relevant, you know? And I feel like that's what these kind of are, where they fill in some gaps. There's some, mildly salacious details, right? Oh, a wine party, Adam and Candace relationship, right? Those are a little spicy, but we didn't need them to progress in the season, or they would have been shown when they happened. And so, it's good flavor.
That's fair. I think my main complaint is just that some of these clips were better, in my opinion, than some of the ones that actually made the show. Like, I would have done some rearranging if I was on the editing side, but...
Yeah, give us a full episode of Cowboys stand-up.
I'm good to hop in to this episode 8.
Oh, yeah, let's start talking about this episode of Survivor. Overall thoughts, what would you say? I liked some of this episode.
Overall thoughts, I'll say a return to mid.
Yep.
Episode 6, we agreed, was the best episode of the season so far. You had the double tribal, some exciting voting dynamics, and I felt like we kind of went back to form here. We have a lot of pre-merge content in this season, and I feel like we kind of went back to the drag of it all. I will say that the vote this week was a bit more exciting because you had multiple potential targets on I2, but it was really just those players at the bottom trying to survive. So I'd say pretty mid episode, but what were your thoughts?
I was absolutely certain that Brad was going home. The episode is titled, Why Aren't You Swimming? Let me say this, and maybe I don't understand how TV worked in 2007 or 6 or whatever. Why title the episode as a red herring? Because that's misleading to somebody watching 15 years later.
You want them to say Flicka goes home in the title of the episode?
No, but I have so many notes throughout the first 2 pages. I have 3 pages of notes. The name Brad covers 2 of the 3.
Yeah, the name Brad comes up more in this episode than he does the rest of the season combined. I feel like he's been pretty invisible up until this point.
So let's jump in here. First up, Nate's a captive. Nate's hanging out. with I2, and Flicka right in front of him starts talking about how she's on the outs and how she's upset that nobody wants to work with her. I get the importance of having non-super fans on the show. This is so fundamental. Don't talk strategy in front of the enemy. It's so basic. Don't show weakness in front of a prisoner. It's art of war shit, right? We're going back to Survivor China for this. And Yul immediately picks up on it because Yul, once again, impeccable perception. And the Yul, Candace, Jenny alliance, right? The miniature alliance within the larger Yul, Candace, Jenny, Jonathan.
Oh, you mean Becky?
Crap. I have Jenny written out throughout this. I completely had them swapped in this episode.
Jenny's over on the Railroad tribe. But that's the trio. It's Yul, Candace, and Becky at the center of I2.
I got them mixed up because, frankly, Becky doesn't get any screen time. It's the Yul and Candace dynamic because they're the only two playing this game. But they have their boot order set. They're going to run this game. They're going to go Ozzy, Flicka, Sundra, Jonathan. And Sundra and Jonathan could be swapped. But they're ready to just run this game down to just the three of them. I like that optimism. And it feels very old, right? This feels like a season 13 kind of thing to say, hey, we're going to stick together and vote out these four people in a row. But it's kind of refreshing. How did you feel about this alliance and the position of this?
I liked gaining this insight into the I2 tribe because I feel like I2 is the polar opposite of Raro, where I have really no clue what's going on over there. I feel like Raro's voting people out every week based on vibes, whereas I2 is very structured in its strategy. I will say I'm surprised that Candace has finessed her way into the core of that tribe. I was under the impression that the core of I2 was Yul, Becky, and Jonathan, because Jonathan and Yul clearly had a connection, and I got the sense that Yul held more agency in that partnership with Becky. So in the end, though, it seems like Becky's the one winning out and pulling Candace into the core over Jonathan. So as much as we can criticize Becky for her little amount of screen time, she's making these minor moves to get an upper leg on Yul in many ways.
Oh, and I want to say this. I don't want to criticize her at all for her lack of screen time. That's production.
Yeah.
Like I think you're totally right. Like, she's made this move possible. And really, at the end of the day, I mean, if Yul didn't have an idol, I think we'd probably be putting Becky at the top of the pile a lot more often. Because Yul has that, like, Jonathan's way out in front. Candace is a little bit behind him. Then there's Yul. Then there's Becky, right? Like, Becky's in a great spot in this alliance in terms of visibility. You know, if she had an idol, she'd be perfect.
Oh, for sure. At the same time, though, I would understand, like, I feel like we have a better appreciation for Becky as a player, but if you're just someone that throws on Survivor every week, I bet you assume that Becky's not doing anything. She's just kind of along for the ride. I'll also say, with that boot order, I was surprised that Ozzy was at the top of the list over Flicka. I was so confident that Flicka would be at the bottom after her comments right in front of Nate, but it seems like the threat of Ozzy in the challenge side is enough to put him number one for them. Like, did you agree with that?
Well, it's the concern, which I think it's the biggest thing to consider right now of when is the merge. If you make the merge and Ozzy is around, he's going to run the game. He's going to catch all the food, he's going to eat well, and he's going to perform well in challenges. Where Flicka, she's a non-entity, right? Like, the biggest risk you have with Flicka is her running her mouth after the merge and sharing everything about your tribal dynamic, which is obviously a liability as well, but it's a more manageable one, right? It's something you could get out ahead of. It's something you could control for more easily than controlling for Ozzy's excellent Meat Boy vibes, right?
Yeah.
And so I liked it, but it's the tricky thing about, especially in the older seasons, there's less regularity, right? Tell me if I'm wrong here, true expert. In the new era, you've got a pretty darn good idea what number's going to go to the merge, right?
Oh, yeah. The new era, it's very standardized in terms of when the mergatory hits and when the merge happens.
And so, like, you could make these decisions not necessarily more easily, but with a lot more information behind them. Back then, right, there's so many twists because they're trying so much stuff in this season that I think having this order but being flexible on it is the key.
I agree. And I think that's better for the game at large when there's such a large element of randomness where players don't know when the merge will happen. Like you'll have seasons in the old school era of Survivor where the merge is insanely late. I need to go back and look, but I think Survivor Thailand Season 5 has a merge at like Final 8 or something crazy like that.
I am.
And I think that's kind of good for the show to keep the players on their toes. That way you don't get this repetitive format of the Aussies going home at Final 11 because everyone expects a merge at Final 10. Last thing I'll say for this I2 segment is that there was a scene that was not shown in this part of the episode, but it comes out in postseason interviews, and it will actually inform the events of episode 9. And I feel comfortable talking about this because you've seen episode 9. I'm not going to get into direct spoilers, but it'll hint at it.
Okay.
When Nate goes over to the I2 tribe, it's been reported that at one point he pulls Candace aside and says, I have an alliance over on Raro. Me, Parvati, Adam, we want to rope you into that group. You should work with us at some point down the line.
Oh, that's big.
And that has major implications for Candace, as we'll talk about next week in episode 9. But it's absurd to me that they cut that entirely. Like, that feels like such an important part of the story arc of the season.
Both for Candace and for Nate, right? Because we see Nate, all he does in his time as captive is sit around and listen. They don't let him participate in the challenge, obviously, because why would you let your captive participate in a challenge where they have no incentive to perform well?
Yeah.
That adds a lot more dimension and frankly makes me think much higher of Nate in his position here where he's not the passive prisoner. He's an active saboteur.
Yeah.
Right? He's playing his game. Do you want to move on to the catalog?
The players receive a book at camp with potential rewards, and they get to select 2 rewards for their tribe should they win the upcoming challenge. So it's a big question. How do you want to set up your tribe for the future? And I think the way that these 2 tribes approach the Survivor catalog says a lot about their mindset. So you got I2, which in my opinion represents a more modern Survivor cast.
Yeah.
They have a lot of strategic minds in that group, like Becky, Candace, Yul, and Jonathan, and they select the food options that theoretically last the longest. They pick peanut butter and potatoes. Raro, on the other hand, is your old school Survivor cast. They think about the immediate satisfaction of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they select the peanut butter and the bread. Who is it on Raro that pushes back on this idea?
It's Brad.
Brad seems to be the voice of reason within that group.
Brad is in the I2 mindset. He is a modern Survivor player. He literally is like, man, come on, guys. Would you rather eat sandwiches tomorrow or potatoes next week?
And the group says, sandwiches tomorrow.
Yeah, he completely is overruled. This is where I started to think, oh, Brad's done. Brad's gone. And you talked about this earlier. We don't know what's going on Raro. But what I think we do know is that Brad has no friends. It sure seems like it, right?
I think he was left out of the consensus plan last week when Christina goes home.
And I'll say one more thing about the catalog is I would love to see the whole catalog. All we know that's in it, all that stuck out to me at least, oil and spices, peanut butter, potatoes, bread. Those things are all appealing, right? But I wonder if there was anything like less interesting, you know?
I wish they put something in that was even worse for the long term, like a birthday cake or
coffee.
Yeah, something that the players could literally only use the day that they win it.
A keg of beer.
I would not be surprised. Nate would be there eyeing it up.
All right, let's go to the challenge. Reward challenge. They're playing for the items they've chosen out of the catalog. And it's a classic Survivor Cook Islands long challenge. A lot of steps to this bad boy. A swim, climb a thing, leap and smash a box. A key falls out of the box into the ocean. Dive down, get a key. 6 keys, unlocks a puzzle. Do the puzzle. I'll say this. Puzzle looks easy. Pardon my French. Easy as fuck.
It's like a 10-piece puzzle.
No, I think it's a 6-piece puzzle of a map of the world. That's it. Super straightforward. And a couple things to note. They don't let Nate compete. When Jeff says that Nate will rejoin his tribe after the challenge, Parvati goes, awesome, which I thought was just worth noting. Brad says, I'll do the puzzle for Rero. And Nate does not like this. Nate is very confused as to why Brad would decide not to, as a strong swimmer, compete in the swimming part of this challenge, because most of the challenge is the athletic portion.
Oh, it's 90% swimming. Like, the puzzle feels more like an accessory than an actual part of the challenge here because it's so small.
The puzzle is like knots in the modern era, right? And so Ozzy absolutely smashes it, shocking nobody. These boxes stop breaking completely. At one point, like, people aren't hitting the boxes hard enough to get the keys to fall out.
It gets to the point where I think Ozzy straight up punches one of the boxes to get the key.
Oh, I think it might be Adam, actually.
Oh, okay.
Who is it that can't swim?
I think it's Rebecca that struggles.
I was thinking Rebecca. Rebecca swims in place of Brad. And by the time she makes it to the platform, one length out, she's gassed. She's done. She barely makes it back in from the water. She is not able to retrieve her key. And she gives up so much time that on top of Ozzy's dominant swimming, there was just no way that Rero could win this.
Yeah, this felt like a pretty comfortable I2 win. But honestly, they explained the challenge, and I had a feeling that I2 would win off the bat.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm someone that would do particularly well in most Survivor challenges, but the Cook Islands challenges I would struggle in way more than any other season. Like, this season has so much swimming.
And the combination of swimming and, hey, swim with a baseball bat in your hand.
And on top of it, you're doing it in the pouring rain. As everyone's waiting to run into the ocean to start the challenge, players are shivering on the beach because it's cold and rainy. So,
yeah,
miserable experience for everyone all around. I didn't find this challenge particularly exciting. I think the challenges on Survivor China have been better for the most part. But I choose your winner. They select Adam to go to Exile Island with the hopes of weakening him further, which I guess has been working since he's not been great in the challenges, and every time Rero attends Tribal Council, Jeff leans into him for his poor challenge performance. But I want to talk about I2 a little bit post-reward. Are you good to go over to I2?
Whoa. Animal shot.
Oh!
We get hermit crabs devouring some sort of bit of carrion on the beach as we watch them scraping peanut butter with their fingers out of these jars and rubbing it on each other's faces and kissing, and it's this weirdly gross peanut butter eating scene that is very animalistic, much like hermit crabs eating food.
See, I interpreted the hermit crabs a little bit differently. I thought that was representing Candace eating out Billy's heart and insulting him yet again. Because here we are with Candace sitting on the I2 beach. And do you remember who once stood on the I2 beach back for the first 2 episodes?
Billy
Garcia. And on the same sand, Candace says, quote, "I'm in love with everybody I can see right now. If anybody wants a kiss, just come over here." Are you serious, Candace? Billy used to be there. He would have appreciated that kiss. She pecks Flicka on the lips for a second. It's ridiculous, dude. Sometimes the Billy Garcia connections just write themselves. Like, it's no coincidence that Candace is on the I2 beach out of all places.
Okay.
You didn't think about that?
Is this what you wanted to talk about back at this camp?
I need to insert Billy somehow in every episode, and this seemed like the clearest connection. Candace has it out for him. I'm telling you, it was a messy breakup. She has this vendetta, and she's intentionally blowing kisses and making remarks in all of the Billy Garcia landmarks.
You don't have to do this.
I'll be doing this every week until Candace hopefully goes home. And when she does, I'll be the one that's celebrating.
At this point, I'm kind of hoping Candace wins, and at the live vote read, she just looks at the camera, just flips off, and goes, like, "I hate Billy."
No,
like,
she would never.
She just slams the door shut on this speculation. But is this what you wanted to talk about at I2?
Oh, yeah, I got nothing else at I2 for this segment. That's it. All I'm saying is I don't think you can name another second boot of any other season. I think he's the most memorable second to last place contestant that we've covered.
Let me say this. I forget him every single episode until you start talking about him.
No, you do not. You remember
I do.
him. You remember the bandana. You remember the heavy metal t-shirt.
I remember the shirt. The shirt's pretty dope. Meanwhile, at Raro, it's bleak, right? Everyone's depressed. Everyone hates Brad. Parvati says she wants to punch him in the mouth. Parvati gets riled up, which I appreciate. I appreciate her competitive spirit. Nate is also very mad at him. That's all I have on Raro. I've got a quote from Exile Island.
Yeah, I don't have much from Raro. It's a lot of just poking at Brad over there. I do think it's kind of funny that they're so upset with Brad over food that would have went bad in like a day or two after they earned it. Like in the grand scheme of things, like this isn't the worst thing for Brad. If they lost immunity, I would understand it a bit more, but I feel like he's getting a lot of hate for no real reason. He's following in the footsteps of JP and Christina, the consensus villain of the Raro tribe.
Yeah, but this is a group who was short-sighted. They were short-sighted when they chose to do the peanut butter and bread. So they're continuing to be short-sighted and say, Brad's mistake here is the biggest problem we have. To go over to Exile Island, Adam says, it's hard to soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by turkeys.
It almost makes me hate Adam a little bit less for stealing Candace away from Billy. But I wrote down that same quote. He makes a little shelter there on Exile Island as well.
Because he suffers.
He probably suffers more than any other player that goes to exile. An entire storm goes over the island, which, in my opinion, is fate. But
Jeff literally says you've suffered worse than anybody else at Exile Island when he comes back. After the storm, do you want to talk about the bird?
Yeah, we have our weekly Ozzy glazing, where the edit needs to hype him up as the provider. He catches a bird, and I think it's funny the way that he presents the bird to the rest of the tribe. He doesn't do it subtly and say, oh, I was out there and I saw an animal and I went and caught it. He walks back holding the bird by the neck and says, caught a bird, with no facial expression at all. I think Ozzy has no remorse. My initial thought was, is this the red-footed booby?
No, it's not, Clyde. Thank you. It is, in fact, the masked booby, also called the masked gannet or the blue-faced booby, I believe. I did a little research. It's hard to find birds, man, but I think this is it.
Any fun facts on this particular bird, or all you have is the name?
They typically lay 2 eggs, and the older one kills the younger one. I'm just looking at my list here to see if there's anything else even remotely interesting.
Oh, you have no other bird facts? Well, that's fine.
Oh, I've got some stuff I'm saving for later, Clyde. Don't you worry.
Okay, I look forward to it.
But, yeah, I mean, I think the baby killing is pretty much it.
But the edit hypes up Ozzy as a provider. We also get Candace hyping up Ozzy. She says, quote, Ozzy's amazing. He's like half animal, half man, part fish, part monkey, part Lord knows what. I'd like to think that the producers asked Candace to describe Ozzy as a provider.
Production loves Ozzy. They love him.
Production loves Ozzy more than the other contestants, and maybe more than the viewers. Like, do you love Ozzy at this point in the season? Because the edit wants you to love Ozzy.
Production loves Ozzy more than Candace loves Billy.
Ouch.
Which is a low bar. They really want to hammer home that this is a show about survival. And only one man on this season is surviving. And that man is Ozzy, insert last name here. I think he's just kind of vibing. I don't think Ozzy cares about winning this game. He just wants to have a good time and be kind of a little nature freak out there killing stuff, fishing and swimming. And I mean, that's got to feel pretty darn good, right? And so I respect that. That's got to be pretty fun.
Do you feel like your perception of Ozzy is different since we've been doing this podcast for like a year and a half now? Like, do you think if we watched Cook Islands first, you would look at Ozzy more favorably?
I really like him, except for as a strategic player, right? In the context of the show, I'm not crazy about it. As a viewer, he's one of my favorites to watch. As a human being, because I'm just a human, Clyde, I'm not a computer. Ozzy, Yule, and Parvati are my 3 favorites to watch, right? As a quasi-professional survivor analyst, which is on my resume now, well, the show is on my LinkedIn. He's pretty low in my power rankings, but I don't know.
Given all of our discussion around Meat Boys for the past year and a half, I thought when we started this season that you would be jumping for joy with Ozzy. I feel like you're kind of lukewarm on him, but maybe your opinion on him will change in the next couple episodes.
I think I'm lukewarm on him as a player because his whole focus is the survival aspect. What we don't hear is, I need to catch these fish to have energy for challenges. He's not Meat Boy oriented in the challenge performance sense. He's Meat Boy oriented in the hunting and fishing sense, which is fine. It's fun. It's a good vibe, but it's, he's no James from China. But all right, do you want to go to the challenge?
Yeah, let's head over to the challenge. I'm looking back at my notes for this one. I don't even remember this challenge. Oh, this is the one with the zip line.
The Zipline challenge with one of the worst angles ever at one point. Worst camera angles ever. Did you notice this?
Is it the shot of Nate?
Yep, it's the shot of Nate. So I'll break this one down. The immunity challenge is both tribes have to assemble a staircase of poles of varying lengths and essentially put them in the proper order so that everyone in the tribe can climb up the staircase. At the top, they have to ride a zip line down into the water, retrieve bags of puzzle pieces, swim back to shore, climb back up, and assemble the puzzle. Couple notes. Yule, not having fun at all. Totally business. He goes down the zip line completely monotone, which felt like the opposite of, do you know that I Think You Should Leave sketch? That's like a Bachelor spoof.
Yeah, the Bachelor parody where she says that he only wants to be there to use the zip line.
Yule is the opposite. Yule is not here for the zip line. But a couple people figure out, I think Ozzy might be the first one to do it actually, that if you sort of curl up into the handles, you can go further, right? Because the further you can go on the zip line, the less you have to swim. Nate, and Jeff calls it a monkey pose. Nate does the same thing where he kind of curls up, brings his legs up close to his torso. But the shot we get is mostly Nate's ass and a little bit of his forehead and eyes. He's almost in like a birthing position, flying through the air towards the camera.
It's hilarious. I love that you get his angry, serious face just peeking out over his ass.
He's totally deadpan as well, kind of like Yule. Rero ends up winning this challenge. Very, very close at the puzzle. The puzzle performers here, which I think it should be noted, do not include Brad.
Yeah.
Right? So interesting to note that when they win by the puzzle, right? This one came down to the puzzle. Brad was not a part of it.
Big win for Rero. I feel like they'd been on a losing streak for a minute.
Yeah, they needed this.
My big highlight from the challenge was that Yule is shredded. I forget just how ripped he is on this season. He has an 8-pack that's glistening as he's going down on the zip line.
You could count his veins. You could count the blood cells going through his veins because they are so visible.
It's insane, especially on I2 where the edit keeps showing Ozzy as the provider of the tribe. You would think that he's by far in the best shape amidst that group. And I think Yule might be in better physical shape than him. He just doesn't care as much about the providing side of the show.
You know what, Yule? Here's the vibe Yule gives me. Because he's like a consultant, right? Management consultant, something like that.
Yeah, some kind of boring business job.
Yule gives me the vibe of a guy who goes into the gym with kind of baggy basketball shorts and just a normal t-shirt, right? He's not all dressed, kitted out to lift. He doesn't have straps. He doesn't have creatine. He doesn't have he doesn't have pre-workout. He walks in, t-shirt, baggy shorts, no headphones,
a plastic water bottle that's lukewarm.
He doesn't listen to anything, and he just stares straight ahead. Maybe in between sets, he plays Tetris on his phone. Everything about him is really monotone and very businesslike, but so effective and successful at the same time,
I think Yule is the type of player that I think really benefits from the era where he plays. Yule's a little bit of a game bot. I don't think we get many personality moments from Yule through these first 8 episodes of the season. So I feel like Yule does really well on Cook Islands where you have all these kooky characters around him. But if you put Yule on a modern season, I think he's pretty bland in comparison to these modern casts where you have people that are strategically savvy, but also quirky personalities.
Yeah, I mean, well said. Well said. He doesn't share a single detail.
And that's why when you said that he was a business consultant, I'm a huge fan of this show. I can't even tell you what Yul does for a living because that's not a part of his character.
The closest thing we have to a personality trait for Yul is his glasses and the fact that he has these very small, very like bookkeeper. These are the glasses that a man who wears a green visor should be wearing, right? And the combination of the tiny business-like glasses and the absolutely shredded dude, impeccable.
I think it was one of those situations where Yul went to the optometrist and they said, this is the cheapest pair of glasses we have. We can give them to you today, or you can wait 2 weeks to get this fancy, stylish pair in 2006. And he says, I'll take the base pair. And you know what? I bet if you look up photos of Yul today, he's still wearing those glasses. I think he's a man of consistency. He's not in it for the style points.
Yeah.
But let's go to I2, post-immunity challenge and pre-tribal council,
and we've got another animal shot.
Oh, I missed this. What's this one?
This one is a hermit crab being swarmed by annoying little bugs. Those annoying little bugs, my friend, are Flicka, and the hermit crab is the rest of her tribe because she won't leave anybody alone. Both she and Jonathan, in different ways, very different ways, spend this whole section chatting everybody and anybody up as much as they can.
I got that sense from Flicka. Like, Flicka's in desperation mode right now. Jonathan, I don't think was as desperate in this entire segment. One of my favorite moments was when Ozzy and Flicka approach Candace, basically asking her to work with them. And then Ozzy pulls out the ultimate Meat Boy argument where he says, hey, if you vote me out of the game, I don't know what you guys are going to do for food. When Ozzy says that, I can tell in his mind, that's like the mic drop of the century. Like, he thinks that when he makes that pitch, Candace will fall head over heels for him. Forget about Billy. Forget about Adam. She's on Team Ozzy right now. As we kind of expected, this argument doesn't really land. I guess it lands in the sense that Ozzy ends up surviving this week, but he's not able to save Flicka in the process. In all these discussions, there's this consistent argument that we've seen for weeks now, which is we got to get rid of Jonathan. Nobody trusts Jonathan.
Yeah.
Have you been able to peg why we don't trust Jonathan yet? I'm still in the dark on this.
He's a sleazeball, right? He talks down to everybody. He has a little bit of a Jean Robert energy to him. He over talks about everything. And he over talks in a way that makes you feel like he's trying to convince you of something he doesn't believe. That's the sense I get. It's not that he's had any big mistake. It's not that he's had any major lie that he's been caught in, anything like that. It's that the way he presents his ideas is a little slimy and a little unconvincing, inauthentic, right?
Okay.
That's how I take it because, I mean, I think this is when we hear from Yul and he's like, I'm not picking up on it, but everybody else keeps saying it to me, so maybe I'm wrong. And he has that self-awareness to say, I should keep this in mind.
I think you're right. It's probably an element of overplaying. I was watching a Jonathan interview this week, which is pretty crazy that he was running an interview. And he said that before going out on Cook Islands, at the time, there's no streaming service. He went and bought a bunch of bootleg Survivor DVDs just to figure out how the game itself works, which I respect, doing what you can to maximize your chances of winning on the show. But I wonder if there's almost a negative to that where he studied the game so much and he feels like he has such a grasp on it that he's overplaying his hand now that he has the opportunity.
Absolutely.
In this entire pre-tribal discussion, the two big names that come forward are Flicka and Ozzy. I never took the Jonathan targeting that seriously based on what Yul and Becky said earlier in the episode with like the potential boot order.
I'll say this though, I never took it too seriously for this week, but I think he just continues to dig himself a hole where just nobody's trusting him.
Yeah, which is interesting. Like, despite Jonathan being a solid strategic mind, it feels like he's never fully been in an alliance on this season. He seemed like he was on the outs of the original Railroad tribe where you had the young hot people all linking up. And even now on the I2 tribe where he's surrounded by other strategists, he can't fully get his foot in the door.
Yeah.
But for this tribal, it's really Flicka or Ozzy.
Yeah.
Who do you think would be the best target if you were Becky or Yule, since they seem to be the ones driving the ship?
I mean, I think Flicka. The concern with Ozzy, right, is he makes the merge and he just waltzes to the end. Everybody after the merge will see him as a threat and go after him. There's no way that doesn't happen. So Ozzy's threat level could take care of itself very, very quickly. Flicka's damage that she could do in a merge is massive. And you look at the two of them and how they play right now. Ozzy, whether or not he's on the chopping block, is like, he's chill. He's like, all right, if you take me out, you won't eat, but whatever, I'll go home. I've had fun, right? Flicka is literally talking even as they're getting ready to go. It's so rare for us to get a shot of the tribe before they walk to tribal, and we get one tonight because Flicka is still talking even then. I would go Flicka.
Yeah, I think I agree with the targeting of Flicka. And part of the reason for that is the makeup of this cast. Like, if there were not many Meat Boys on Cook Islands, then I would think, okay, maybe we need to cut Ozzy at final, 12 instead of a little bit later in the pre-merge. But since you have people like Brad, like Adam, like Yule, like Parvati, there's other physically competent people on this cast that I could see defeating Ozzy in a challenge in the post-merge. That makes me feel a little bit safer with keeping him around for that challenge side of the game.
Yeah.
I think the other worry is that if you cut Ozzy here, we're going from 13 to 12. So the numbers will be tied 6-6 going into next week. So you kind of need that challenge win to get the numbers advantage going into the merge. And there's no doubt that Ozzy will help you in that cause. We hit on this earlier. I just think it's funny because Jonathan brings it up in confessional where the decision to keep or cut Ozzy has nothing to do with Ozzy the individual. It has everything to do with the game of Survivor and when production decides to run the merge, which to me, whenever I run my player rankings at the end of the season, that's something that will be difficult for me to value. Yes, Ozzy technically survives this round, but was it really his own doing? I guess you could say it's his challenge strength that kept him, but it's also just kind of luck and when the production team decides to bring everybody together.
Yeah, well said.
Let's go to Tribal. Do you have any highlights?
I have one note.
Okay.
Yule straight up calls Flicka a non-threat.
Well, he's not wrong, right?
Yeah, it's the most direct we've ever seen Yule of just being like, yep, not a threat. Don't have to worry about her.
My one highlight is that Jeff brings up the race-based twist of the season. I feel like we haven't talked about the original tribal division since episode 3.
No.
I kind of forgot that it was even a phase of the show.
Did you? Kind of hard to forget.
There's moments where it's not a major part of the storyline. It just feels like a diverse cast, right? And then Jeff, a month later, has to go, hey, remember when we divided you guys by race? It's kind of absurd. I wonder when in the season will Jeff stop bringing it up? Are we going to be at final 5 and Jeff will say hey, remember on day 6, the way that you guys were divided? I'm ready to move past it. But your final vote is 6 on Flicka, 1 on Jonathan. All the votes pile on Flicka, including Ozzy, who I thought might stay loyal to her to the very end. But good strategic move by Ozzy to cut her loose when he knew the numbers were not on her side. Were you sad to see Flicka go?
No.
Not even a little bit? Not a care in the world?
Nope. I don't think for somebody as quirky as she seems to be, I mean, she seems like a very interesting person. I feel like we didn't get a single bit of flavor about her. I don't think Jeff liked her. That's my take on Flicka. He never calls her Flicka until, I think he calls her Flicka once in this episode, actually, during a challenge. This is my theory. Jeff didn't like her, didn't want to call her Flicka, and production was like, okay, we just won't include her at all in the edit. Her quirky personality fell to the wayside because Cowboys was quirkier. She didn't contribute a lot at camp, in gameplay, in strategy.
That's fair. Flicka does not return for a future season. There's very little information on her since filming in 2006. I tried to find the quarantine questionnaire for Flicka. and she was either never contacted by Entertainment Weekly or she rejected the opportunity. So Flicka's kind of gone off the grid. My big takeaway with Flicka as a player is that Flicka walked so that Carolyn could run. To me, Carolyn feels like an older, more strategically savvy contestant than Flicka. Like, Flicka had no clue what was going on. Jonathan said in that same interview I mentioned earlier that Flicka had not seen the show once when she went out there. So she feels to me like a similar quirky archetype as Carolyn. I was not devastated to see her go. I feel like we're still in the stage of trimming the edges of the cast.
Yeah. We're cleaning up the topiary, as it were.
I feel confident that by final 10, I'll legitimately care about every remaining player on the island. There's still a couple side characters and background people, but by final 10, I'm hoping that every person will hold some value.
Yeah, we're close. We're close.
Where do you want to start for winners and losers?
Let's take care of winners because I bet we have the same one.
I don't think we do.
No?
Mine's Candace.
Now, let me ask you this, young man. Is your winner Candace because of the information about Nate and the conversation they had? Or is it because of what she does in this episode?
It's a combination of both. Knowing like the behind the scenes of her connection with Nate definitely informed the winner pick here. But it also comes from the fact that Candace has now navigated into the core of I2. Like, I feel like we knew that Yul and Becky were running the show, and it wasn't until this week that Candace partners up alongside them. So I feel like she's in a really powerful position with connections on both tribes. Like, you can make the argument that Candace is the most well-connected player on the entire cast.
That's fair. That's a very good point.
Who's your winner?
My winner is Yul, because why wouldn't it be Yul? He's willing to reconsider his alliance with Jonathan. He's continuing to strengthen his alliances within his tribe. He continues to be somehow the biggest physical threat, and yet not perceived as the biggest physical threat. He lays in the hammock pretty much all the time, and somehow that seems to convince people that he doesn't have all those muscles. So, good job, Yul.
So my question for you is, we've had 7 episodes so far with winners and losers. How many do you think you've given Yul the winner?
Easily 4. Easily 4.
The answer is 5. 5 out of 7 so far. I guess he's coming for Russell Hantz right now, who holds the record on our podcast for most winners in a single season.
I love Yul. I'm a big fan of his, man. He's great.
Yeah, I can't talk. I've given Yul the winner 3 out of 7. So I'm almost half with him. We can go to losers, where I have Brad, who in my mind emerges as the consensus target of Rero. Yeah. We've discussed many times that Rero is short-sighted, and when Brad is the new villain, it means that he's likely going home at their next tribal council unless someone else does something to piss off the rest of the group.
Yeah, I mean, I had Brad for the exact same reasons. It felt certain that if Rero went to tribal, Brad would be gone.
Honorable, dishonorable. I have a quick dishonorable mention to the Survivor editing team. I feel like this is a pretty common dishonorable for me. And it's what I said earlier. When I watched a closer look, I realized that there were multiple segments that would have benefited the main show. As much as I hate to admit it, I think the Adam Candace clip would have helped a lot in explaining their relationship. There's also a clip that I didn't mention earlier of Stephanie lying to JP. So before JP gets voted out, like right before they're about to go to tribal council, he hugged Stephanie and says, "I'm so sorry it's you. Like, I really don't want it to be you, but there's no other way." And Stephanie just smiles at him and says, "It's okay, I understand." And JP ends up going home in that same tribal council. So
excellent.
It shows a bit of a cutthroat side to Stephanie's game that I didn't necessarily expect. But even that would have been helpful in the main show.
Nice.
What's your honorable?
My honorable mention goes to Renee Primavera Lasson.
Okay.
Born 20th of March, 1794, died 28th of April, 1849. He was a French surgeon, naturalist, ornithologist, and herpetologist, which is a lizard scientist. Couple things to interest you. He's the one who gave the Latin name to, of course, the black-winged. Where did it go? Hold on. I have a lot of tabs open.
You don't remember?
To the masked booby. Sorry. I have a lot of bird tabs open right now because I was trying to figure out what the bird was this week. But he gave the Latin name to the bird this week. Interesting things about Lasone. He was the first naturalist to document birds of paradise in the wild. Birds of paradise are probably the coolest birds. If you've seen Planet Earth, they're the ones with the intricate mating rituals. The other thing to interest you here, he married a scientific illustrator who, along with her sister, drew all of the birds in his books about birds, which is pretty cool. I guess this is pretty relevant to Cook Islands. He presented a division of human races based on color terms. And a lot of them are still used today. There's a couple that aren't, but a lot of them are. Finally, he spread a rumor that for like 30 years was believed in Europe that in New Zealand, the number system was based on 11s. It was a base 11 counting system, which it was not, and it was a typo in one of his papers. And then when people called him on it, he doubled down and said, yep, they count by 11s. So
it wasn't a rumor that he started. It was a mistake.
It was a mistake that he pushed because he committed to it.
I respect the commitment to the bit. At first, I thought you were saying that he was going up to people in the hallways and saying, like, did you hear it's an 11-based system? And then running away afterwards. It was more formal than that.
Yeah, he basically went on a trip to New Zealand and came back and wrote a letter. And when the typo got around, he's like, yep, that's the truth.
Shout out to him. Another historical figure to get an honorable mention. I feel like that's the theme of the season.
I'm trying to elevate the dialogue here, Clyde.
You're a teacher. You bring people in under the guise of survivor analytics, and they leave with, I guess, knowledge of random scientists from like the 1700s and 1800s.
Exactly.
But that's everything we have for this week. Next week is a huge episode of Survivor Cook Islands. You've already seen it. I need to watch it. It's been probably like 3-4 years since I've seen this one, but it's the Mutiny episode. That's the title of it. I think it might be the best episode of the pre-merge in Cook Islands from what I remember. So I'll be excited for next week. I initially thought that the Mutiny was this week. I forgot that we had to knock out Flicka before we get to the real meat.
So this was a disappointing one for you. You're like waiting for this big twist to happen and it never came.
And it never came.
Yeah.
But catch us next week. We'll cover the Mutiny, an act of betrayal, which shouldn't surprise you given Candace's actions earlier on the season.